All right, what's going on, everybody? Harry here, and we're going to get started with our monthly YouTube live session. So I'm going to give it a few minutes and let things queue up. Looks like we're live now, so thank you to everyone who's gone ahead and joined. These are monthly live Q&A series that I like to do, usually at the beginning of each month, and we'll go ahead and talk about everything from some latest changes to the Uber and Lyft app updates, some breaking news, and then we'll also focus a majority of the time on a live Q&A session. So thank you to everyone who's joining. I'm going to give it a few seconds for everyone to filter in right now. Feel free to say hello if you're sitting in chat. If you guys do have questions, definitely save them for a few minutes, start thinking about them, and I'll try to answer them towards the, once we go through a few of the breaking news stories, some of the latest Uber and Lyft app updates. So start thinking about those questions and definitely want you guys to basically share them. I'm going to try and answer as many questions as possible tonight. And since it is tax time right now, I believe we're in early February, so I'm going to be answering a lot of tax questions, I suspect, today. So hopefully you guys can hear me okay. Hopefully you guys can see me okay. And just want to thank you once again for joining. Looks like we got a bunch of people filtering in. We're already up to 80 people watching live, so that's awesome. And looks like we've got people coming in. Georgie from North Jersey, Manuel from Upland, Jeff from Dallas, and let's see, McCarland, he says, I love that Harry has a crown icon. I'm not sure why or how that happened, but definitely here to help you guys out tonight. I'm looking forward. There's a lot of cool things we can cover tonight, and I suspect there'll be a lot of tax questions too, so I'm definitely happy to kind of go over all of that and help you guys with everything and tell you everything I know, and we can get started. So I'm going to go ahead and get started. Make sure you guys, if this is your first YouTube Live, we do these each and every month, so make sure that you subscribe to the YouTube channel. That's the best way to get notified of when we do these, and then that way you'll get a notification when we go live and you won't have to rely on a calendar invite or anything like that. So basically what we're going to do is we're going to go over some top news stories, a couple latest app updates, and then question and answers. I also have Christian in the comments section right now, so if I'm not able to get to any questions, or if I'm just not fast enough for you guys, he'll be able to answer some questions too. Definitely save your questions, start thinking about them. If you can make it till the end, definitely stay tuned to the end. I'm going to be giving away a little Rideshare guys swag, so you can see the hat. We've got a new color right here with the green, and hopefully you guys can make it to the end. I usually give away about 3 hats every single time, and definitely excited to have you here. So with all that, let's get started. Looks like we've got a bunch of people watching live, so thank you for joining. I really do appreciate it, and I'm going to try and share as much knowledge as I can, and let's get started. So as you guys know, just kind of going over some of the top stories in Uber and Lyft land and rideshare world over the past month. The big thing in the past couple of weeks has kind of been this political stuff with Uber and Lyft. And honestly, I'm not going to get too political. I haven't really touched on it, the politics side of anything on the blog or the YouTube channel, and I don't really plan to start now. So I'm going to kind of let the people that want to discuss politics in politics blogs on the news sites, let them do that for now, though. I think we're going to kind of focus on the rideshare aspect and really cover the issues that are directly related to rideshare. And, I know for some people, I know for me personally, I'm kind of getting burnt out everywhere I look, seeing politics this, politics that. So for me, it's really just about I like going to the rideshare guy and just working on rideshare stuff. Uber and Lyft are definitely making it tough with everything they've said or haven't said, kind of getting involved in the rideshare. Personally, I think they should it's tough, but I think that they should really kind of stay out of politics. They really are alienating a lot of drivers, a lot of riders, and everyone's just kind of pissed off. So obviously there's some issues going on right now with politics, but we're going to ignore them for the most part. The important thing, though, that I will mention is anecdotally, I'm curious to know from you guys right now, feel free to chime in on the comments. If you're an Uber or Lyft driver, and we actually surveyed our audience this year, we got over 1,100 responses, and I believe 65% of drivers said that they drive for Uber and Lyft or multiple services. So I know that a majority of my readers, at least, probably because they're listening to me and I'm always telling them, you guys should have at least Uber, at least Lyft, right? At least 2 apps, one, even if it's just a backup. And what I've heard from a lot of drivers this week is that Lyft has been actually surprisingly busy, right? So that's how sometimes, these politics issues, whatever's going on, you need to realize how is it going to affect you. And anecdotally, a lot of drivers have told me that they've been getting more requests with Lyft. Usually maybe they get 3-to-1 or 4-to-1 Uber to Lyft, and lots of drivers are saying, hey, there's more Lyft riders out this week, and that might make sense based off what we've seen. So definitely, it looks like we got Leo chiming in. He says, I've noticed I'm getting way more Lyft requests the last couple of weeks in the Bay Area. So it might also be a function of where you drive, right? If you tend to drive in an area where maybe Lyft is now the more friendly option, where you're kind of, the citizens there kind of agree with what Lyft is saying, then maybe, hey, that's an opportunity. That's something you could take advantage of. So definitely just kind of keep that in mind. I'm curious to know if you guys have noticed a difference between Lyft and Uber in the past couple weeks since they've been in the news cycle a lot. Definitely keep that in mind, and because it can benefit you guys a lot. So if you guys haven't checked out our weekly roundups, we actually every single week, John Insee, who's one of our longtime contributors, he's actually been writing for us for 2 years. He does weekly roundups, and I'll leave a link right there in the show notes. But basically, he rounds up all the top news stories, everything that's going on. So if you guys want to know what's going on a weekly basis, definitely check that out. And you can subscribe to our email. I'll leave a link in the show notes, but it's just therideshareguy.com/email. And then you can get that info. So it looks like we got some good feedback coming in. Andrea says, that's why more Lyft requests. Robert says he's doing Lyft, Juno, and Uber, seeing more Lyft. And it looks like Mick Harland, Mick HC Harlan, something like that. He says more Lyft this weekend, more Uber this coming week. So definitely something to keep an eye on. And I'm gonna take a sip of water right here because I've been talking a lot. Now, the other thing, just kind of keeping briefly on the Lyft topic, they are expanding to 100 more cities. So if they're not in your city, it's definitely a good idea to jump on board. And the reason why I tell drivers to at least do Uber and Lyft is because oftentimes they may have competing promotions. Even if you're solely getting Uber rides or mainly doing Uber, it's always good to have Lyft or another app, honestly, any app, as just a backup, because you really never know when the Uber app is going to go down, when Uber is going to decide to lock you out of your account, when a passenger might make a comment that leads to you getting temporarily deactivated and Uber investigating your account. These are all things that honestly happen more often than you might think. And I get lots of emails from drivers who something happens with their Uber or Lyft accounts and they have no backup plan, right? And as an independent contractor, you guys really need to be thinking, what's my backup plan just in case? So even if you're going to sign up with another app just in case, I know delivery has been super popular. I think you guys definitely want to keep an eye on that. So it looks like we've got a lot of people coming in. It talks about, so we've got over 100 people. So thank you everyone for joining. I want to touch on a few of the top news stories. And I mentioned the survey results we released. There's definitely some interesting stuff there. We can go ahead and leave a link there and you guys can check that out. And before we get into the Q&A session, I just want to talk about a couple latest app updates to the Uber and Lyft app. And frankly, I haven't seen a ton of big updates. The only one that I want to bring up today on today's session is that I've actually been noticing, I've gotten a lot of emails lately about updates to the Uber Passenger app. And the reason why this is important is because if you guys, right, normally if you're an Uber or Lyft driver, you're logging on to the Uber driver app and unfortunately you can't see where other drivers are, right, on the Uber and Lyft apps. And if you actually use the Uber Passenger app, you can see where the closest 8 drivers are. Now, I'm getting lots of mixed, feedback, mixed reviews from people saying that they can or they can't see it. And I think a lot of times this might be an iOS versus Android issue. And I know for me, I'm going to pull up my app right here and show you guys because my Uber Passenger app is completely up to date. So this is my Uber Passenger app, right? And you guys can see right here. We'll see if this comes in focus or not. Hopefully that is focused, and you can probably see that there are a bunch of other little cars on the map, and yeah, it looks like you guys can see. So I can still see the closest 8 passengers the closest 8 drivers. And obviously you can use that as a driver, right? You can use that to position yourself or where not to position yourself, how many drivers are out and things like that. So I guess I would say I'm curious to know from you guys right now. Feel free to leave a comment and let me know if you can still see other drivers on your passenger app and whether you're on iOS or whether you're on Android. And we actually have a good video about the new Uber Passenger app that sort of shows a little hack that we found that basically allows you to see, because you used to be able to just just drag and drop the pin, and you would be able to see where the other drivers are. It would refresh the closest 8 drivers. Now there's a little bit more to it, so you're going to have to use this little hack. I'll leave a link to that, but it's basically if you type in new Uber driver video or something like that on our YouTube channel, it should pop up. And that's all I want to say with that kind of new Uber app. So definitely check that out. It looks like Ken is saying, I can still see other drivers on Android. McHarlan is saying, I'm on iOS, but haven't looked, will do soon. Powerful One is saying, I reverted back to an older app on Android. So that's the other nice thing, right? If there's ever changes, I mean, personally, you sometimes with these apps that are super important or software updates or anything like that, you kind of want to wait a week or two and let all the bugs get worked out. So if you have automatic updates on, sometimes it's better to actually turn those off, or at least for certain apps. If you're constantly using this Uber Passenger app and they update and screw something up, you don't want that to affect your earnings, right? So maybe that's an app where you turn off automatic updates. So that way you kind of let other people work out the bugs, test out the kinks, and then you can basically wait and update or even revert back to an older version or something like that. So it seems like we've got lots of good comments coming in, and it seems like definitely everyone that's on Android is seeing those. So now that we've kind of gone through a few of those, I definitely want to start getting into the question and answer section. I'm happy to help with taxes, happy to help with any of that. Obviously, you guys know I'm not a CPA, but I can kind of give you advice or information, and it's really up to you to look it up. I've got a lot of experience with this, obviously, from the rideshare stuff and driving for Uber and Lyft, but also just running businesses in general, because whether you guys realize it or not, you're an independent contractor, and that means special reporting, tax, expense requirements, all that fun stuff. So with that being said, definitely feel free to start chiming in. If you guys have any questions, I definitely want to start answering them. It doesn't have to be about taxes. It can really be about anything. I'll probably answer a few general tax questions, but excuse me, more than happy to talk about whatever you guys want. And make sure you stay tuned to the end too. Like I said, I'm going to be giving out this swag. These we got green this week, so it's green Rideshare Guy hats. They've been pretty popular, and hopefully you guys can make it to the end. So let's see what kind of questions we've got coming in. It looks like Joseph says, is Lyft ever going to put PTX in after ride is accepted versus learning after ride is completed? So that's a weird way to answer or word the question, but I think I know what you're talking about. Basically, Joseph is referring to the fact that with Lyft, you don't see prime time until the ride is actually over, right? So when you get a request, you can see on your map where prime time is, but you don't necessarily know that the ride is on prime time until after the request, right? Which is honestly, Christian has done a lot. He's done a couple articles on this, and this is one of our big complaints. We think this is a feature that Lyft should really change. I don't think it makes a lot of sense, because for a lot of drivers, when it's surging, when it's prime timing, I don't know if that's an actual word, I just made that up, but when it's busy out and you have the option of taking a guaranteed 2x Uber fare or some random prime time that may or may not be on prime time, there's a big incentive for drivers to stick with Uber when it's really busy out. So definitely that's something that you should keep an eye on. And like I said, I don't know why they do that, but that's something that they should definitely change. So hopefully Christian can go ahead and link to that article in the show notes. And let's see. So Chris has a good question here. He says, like I asked earlier, what is the policy for picking up teenagers or high school kids? I've had several kids request rides recently in my area. And so this is something that honestly has changed a lot, but it's actually in California, it's against the CPUC's terms, which is the Public Utilities Commission's terms to transport anyone under the age of 18. I believe it's even an Uber or Lyft kind of law, if you want to call it, that you're not allowed to transport minors under the age of 18. Now, the reason why is because of liability, right? Now, you're still completely, if you take a minor, let's say it accidentally happens, you don't realize until too late, you're still covered for insurance, you're still covered for all of that, right? You're not going to get deactivated or anything like that. But it is risky in the sense that it is against Uber and Lyft's terms. Now, I've never heard of them deactivating a driver who was giving rides to minors, but you could imagine that they have that policy in place for a reason, right? They have that policy in place in case there's some type of accusation or if there's something that could go wrong. And, it's just a risk for a driver. So that's sort of how I would handle that situation. Personally, I use a dash cam. You guys probably know that I've reviewed the Falcon 360. That's the one I personally use. It's good. It's not perfect, but it definitely gets the job done. Records outwards, inwards sound. You put a little sticker up on your window and you're good to go in most states. And So there's that option, which will really protect you. So I definitely want to know for you guys, if you have experienced any issues with transporting minors, how have you guys handled it? Feel free to chime in and let me know, because it's definitely something that as drivers you need to be aware of. And maybe you don't cart everyone on their way out, or on their way into the car, but definitely consider, hey, if they are a minor, that there's some potential legal and liability issues there, and that's the type of stuff you need to really be careful of. So. Alan actually has a follow-up question, says, do they deactivate minors? And honestly, this is one of those areas where I'm not super happy with Uber and Lyft's response to this situation, because they sort of know that it's going on, but they're really not doing anything about it. I haven't gotten confirmation that they're actually deactivating if a minor requests a ride. And of course, you can report it after the trip, and you may want to make sure you get a cancellation fee, but I haven't heard of Uber deactivating these accounts. So definitely something to watch out for. Now, let's see. McCarlin, you say that you can see but not hear me. You should be able to hear me, because it looks like my audio is coming in okay. So, Leo, wow, you're getting a lot of questions answered. You just happen to pop up every time I look at the chat. But good question, because you says, I'm getting conflicting info. Can we be deactivated for a low acceptance rate, or just from a high cancellation rate, or both, or neither? So I actually just recorded a video on this. And if you guys search my YouTube channel, therideshareguy.com/YouTube, head over there, subscribe, and you can see that we just released a video, or we're about to release a video on acceptance versus cancellation rate. And in short, you can no longer be deactivated for low acceptance rates, right? So that's if you see a trip come in and ignore it, you can't be deactivated for that. But you have to watch out, because Uber will put you in timeout if you ignore 2 or 3 requests in a row. Cancellation rates are different, right? If you accept a trip and then cancel it and do that too much, usually it's in the 20 to 30% range. You actually can be deactivated for that. So definitely, that's something to keep an eye on. And if you guys are having any audio or video problems, just hit refresh on this YouTube Live, or close the app and then open it, because it should all be working. This is about our 5th one, so hopefully we've worked out all the kinks. Now, I definitely am happy to keep answering questions. If you guys have anything specific that you'd like answered, now's the time to ask. We're going to go for probably another 30 or 40 minutes. I'm going to try and stay as long as I can and answer as many questions as possible. And like I said, we do these monthly live Q&As every single month, and this is probably the best one, or I shouldn't say the best one, but this is probably the most people we've ever had. So definitely thank you. If you're joining right now, I want to really thank you for joining, and hopefully I can provide some value for you guys right now. So looks like we've got another question coming in, and this sort of is along the lines of that acceptance rate. Please address avoiding UberPOOL. So if you guys don't have UberPOOL in your market yet, it probably is coming sometime soon. It's in most of the major and even a lot of the mid-sized markets, but basically UberPOOL, right? Sharing rides. Passengers are sharing rides from one pickup location, 2 passengers near each other, and getting dropped off near each other, right? So it's 2 separate groups of passengers. And obviously with UberPOOL, a lot of drivers are not big fans of it. We just did a survey, and over 50% of drivers were not satisfied with their experience doing UberPOOL. And really the reason for that is that you're actually paid at the lower per mile and per minute rates, yet you sort of have to do double the work. So what I've heard from a lot of drivers, what they're sort of trying to do to get out of UberPOOL is that first of all, some drivers are emailing Uber and asking to opt out of UberPOOL. Now, I've heard really mixed results on this. I don't know if this is possible. And some drivers that have told me they've successfully gotten confirmation from Uber, but then they keep getting UberPOOL requests. So I'm not sure exactly if that's a great solution, but you can obviously ignore UberPOOL requests. Now, if you're going for bonuses or incentives or guarantees, you have to watch out, because sometimes they require you to accept 90% of rides. And if you have a bonus where it's do 120 trips or something like that and get a bonus, you probably want to take those short UberPOOL rides. So that's definitely something to keep in mind. But honestly, I think a lot of drivers these days that are listening to us, at least, are just ignoring those UberPOOL rides. And like I said, if you ignore 2 to 3 in a row, then you may get put on timeout by Uber. But since even if, let's say, 50% of requests are UberPOOL, as long as you're only ignoring 1 out of every 2, you can still go and get that UberX ride and then let someone else take that UberPOOL ride. So hopefully that answers your question. And it looks like we have a couple questions coming in about rideshare insurance. If you guys have anything specific about that, definitely let me know. It looks like Sean is talking about State Farm insurance, and we do have a insurance marketplace on our site. So if you guys type in rideshare insurance over on the Rideshare guy. Let me pull it up for you guys right now. And honestly, if you guys ever have any questions, we probably have it covered. Just type in your question and Rideshare guy into Google or a YouTube channel, and you'll probably be able to figure it out pretty quickly. So let me leave a link right now to our Rideshare insurance page, and you guys can check that out if you have further questions on that. So it looks like Vinny is chiming in now, and he's saying, I requested to be removed from pool in November and have not gotten a pool request since. So that's awesome to know, Vinny. I would love to see if other drivers are able to replicate that, because I've gotten quite a few emails from drivers who I've told to try that, and Uber confirms it, but then they're still getting Uber pools. So definitely check that out, and let me know what you think. And yeah, if you guys are looking, going back to the rideshare insurance, there is USAA. We have a full list of options on our site. Definitely something important. Let's see, we've got a couple more. Joseph says, UberPOOL is profitable to do them, or should we just keep? I don't really understand that question. Manuel says, I like UberPOOL when you're on incentives. I get all my trip done quicker. So that's definitely something to keep in mind, right? Because if you guys are in a city where Uber is constant, this tends to be in the bigger cities. Uber offers a lot of bonuses and Lyft, incentives, promotions, right? Sometimes it makes sense to go for shorter rides, right? So just keep those types of strategies in mind, right? Normally we're talking about strategies to find those longer to mid-sized trips where you can make more money. But if you're in a city where they're offering a bonus per ride, right? Maybe you want to do as many rides as possible. So you really want to position yourself in a bar area or someone where there's going to be a lot of shorter trips, right? So that's definitely some strategy to keep in mind. And it looks like we've got lots of questions coming in, so hopefully you guys are getting some value. And you're right, Chris says, I've heard UberPOOL is the default for SF Bay Area, so that's San Francisco Bay Area. And yeah, I believe I saw that 50% of trips in San Francisco are now UberPOOL, so definitely something to keep in mind. And we've got, let's see, this is a good question right now. We've got a couple questions coming in about Uber support, and then some technology questions. Will Uber ever improve email question responses instead of canned responses? So that's from Leaf and Tell. And I guess what I would say is that honestly, I don't think Uber has really made customer service a priority in their business. As you guys all know from, honestly, the most popular article on my site is actually the top 9 ways to contact Uber. So that should really tell you the problems that Uber is having. Most people don't even know how to get a hold of them, right? And it seems like they're making it tougher. No phone line. They removed their email support. So now you actually have to initiate an inquiry from the help section of the driver app. We also have a short link that if you're unable to access your account, you can go to the rideshareguy.com/Uber inquiry, and I'll leave a link right now in the show notes to that. But let me drop this link right here for you guys. And that will actually allow you to send an email from the website. But for the most part, it is kind of a struggle. And I guess what I would say is that there are certain things, though, that you as a driver, you can ask very simple 1 to 2 questions, right? That's going to improve your chances of getting a good response. Because sometimes I get lots of emails from drivers, and it's like one huge block text, all cap letters. And I just look at it, and like in my head, I'm like, I honestly, this is going to be very mentally draining to help this person, right? So just keep that in mind, right? Keep it simple, keep it easy if you are going to reach out to Uber support. And in the future, honestly, I'd love to say they're probably going to get better, but I don't know if I see that coming on the horizon. A good trick, though, is when you have any type of complex issue that can't be handled over email, or you're kind of running into a dead end, go to in-person office hours, right? Because there you'll get an actual Uber employee who's going to be much more knowledgeable, who can look things up in real time, and you can explain a lot of different situations. So I see another question coming in from 15 Sace, and he says, do you use the Uber Beacon? What do you think of it? And also, do you know of any other new rideshare technology on the horizon? And yes, I do have the Uber Beacon. On the last YouTube Live, I actually believe I showed it, and we did a pretty cool unboxing video. I'm biased. I did the unboxing, so I think it's cool. But you guys can go ahead and check that out. Just type into our YouTube channel, Uber Beacon Unboxing, and hopefully we can get a link in the show notes for you. But check that out, and I think this is actually a pretty cool feature. It matches your rider, basically can select a color, and then the beacon will light up and show that color to the passenger, and basically just makes it easier for drivers and riders to pick each other up. And you might think it's kind of stupid, or you might think it's kind of cheesy, but honestly, it's those features like that that really could affect your bottom line going forward, in that if your passengers can find you quicker, that means you can do more rides, right? Especially during those times when it matters most, during surge, right? Because that's when the beacon, you don't need a beacon to go when you go to someone's house and pick them up. They know that you're out front, they can find you pretty easily, but it's those times when big events are letting out or things like that. And I also want to mention a cool product that we just took a look at on the blog. Christian wrote a good article, which you can share right now in the chat window, on Navdi. And this is actually a heads-up display unit, which basically sits right on your dashboard right here, and it's a clear screen, and basically allows you to see kind of oncoming traffic, or not oncoming traffic, but see GPS and navigation much easier. We've been testing these. We have a couple good YouTube videos on it. You should definitely check out. It's Navdy, and the unit is pretty expensive right now, but I just like the technology and that it's making it easier and safer for drivers. So if you have any questions about that, definitely leave them right now in the chat window, and I'm sure Christian will be able to help you. So hopefully, you guys these are getting some questions for you. And you're right, Jim, the Navdi is pretty expensive, but at the same time, for a lot of these products, right, going forward, we know the price is going to come down. Imagine a partnership between Navdi and Uber and Lyft, and that's where, you can start using hand gestures to take calls and texts to accept a request. I mean, imagine if you could just go like that and accept a request, or do UberPOOL or something like that. It makes a lot of your life easier. So that's kind of why I'm a fan of these. And yeah, you're right. Of course, they're expensive at the start, but everything's expensive at the start. Over time, it could potentially come down. So let's see. We've got some questions coming in, and okay, so let's see. Some comments on the Navdi vid was awesome. Out of my price point, but hopefully not for long. That's right. And let's see. We've got. As far as the Uber Beacon, it is only being rolled out in a few markets. So if you're not in one of those markets yet, you're not going to get it. So I would say some point in 2017, every Uber driver will have a beacon, but there's no ride limit or anything like that. They're just going to start sending them out when they roll them out. So like, for example, I'm here in LA. I asked Uber to send me one early. They obliged, sent me one early so I could look at it, do a review and things like that, but I can't actually use it while I'm out driving yet. So that's something to keep in mind. And let's see. So I want to answer a couple tax questions, because obviously it's tax time. You guys should have all gotten your 1099s by now from Uber, from Lyft. You may have some questions, and I'm curious if you've done your taxes already. You don't even need my advice. Let us know in the comments, and feel free to share. If you have any tax questions, I'm definitely here to answer them. I want to spend a few minutes right now going over some tax questions and answers. I'll cover a few of the most common questions I'm seeing, and then if you guys have anything specific, definitely feel free to let me know in the chat window. And like I said, obviously I'm not a CPA, so I can't give legal or tax advice or anything like that, but I can definitely try my best to help provide some information and guide you guys in the right direction. And if you haven't got your 1099 by now, you can actually log on to Lyft.com, or you can log on to partners.uber.com and see under the tax section, right? It should have all of your 1099s and, most importantly, your tax summary available. Because if you guys are just doing your taxes for the first time this year, or maybe you didn't realize this last year, but Uber and Lyft actually report your gross income, right? So everything that you guys make as an Uber and Lyft driver, right? That income is included. Everything that Uber also charges, right? So the commission, the tolls, the fees, anything like that, they're going to include as gross income on your 1099K. Now, Uber issues a 1099K to all drivers, and that's for all of that driving income. They may also issue a 1099 MISC if you did over $600 in referrals and bonuses and things like that. So that's a little bit about how those 1099s work. And if you notice, if you add up all your paychecks from Uber for 1 year in 2016, for example, and you compare that to the gross income listed on your 1099K, those numbers are going to be different, right? Because Uber reports everything, right? So it's up to you on your taxes to basically go in and use the tax summary that Uber sends, and then that way you can actually deduct all those things. And we have a good tax guide that I'll go ahead and share a link to right now. You guys can check it out. And that basically explains how you can take care of all of those all that gross income and all those expenses and things like that. So if you guys have any other questions about taxes, feel free to ping me right now. And it looks like we've got some other questions coming out. And Lance says, is it self-explanatory or need a tax person? And that's a good question, because we actually surveyed our audience, and I believe that about 60% of our audience does taxes themselves using a software like TurboTax or H&R Block or something like that. So it's definitely doable yourself. And I guess the one thing I would say about doing taxes yourself, the nice thing is that it's going to sort of force you and teach you how all these things work, right? How the income works, how the expenses work. Because honestly, I'm not a big fan of just going to a CPA, giving your information, and then hoping for the best, right? It's really on you. No one cares about your money as much as you do. I guess that's the best way to really sum it up. So whether you do taxes on your own or go to a CPA, you should definitely have at least a basic understanding. And it might seem a little overwhelming at first, but once you guys get the hang of it, I definitely guarantee that it'll be worth it. So let's see. McCarlin says, I'd say an accountant, that's what I'm going to do, but I have a small biz, something completely different. And you're right, for some people, if you have a more complex situation, or you can find a good CPA. Now, we do have a couple recommended CPAs. If you go to our tax guide or shoot me a message later, I can recommend a CPA or two to you so that you can go and make sure you find someone. If you do end up using a CPA, you're definitely going to want someone who specializes in rideshare. I'm hearing from a lot of drivers, and it sort of makes me cringe. They're talking about what their CPA is telling them, and frankly, like a lot of what their CPA is telling them is wrong, probably just because they don't understand what being an Uber or Lyft driver is. So if you do end up using a CPA, make sure that they understand rideshare, they understand small business owners and things like that. So let's see, Chuck says, a lot of people think that they can get back money that they shouldn't be getting back. Hope y'all don't get caught by the IRS. And that does bring up another good point. A lot of people, so for Lyft, for example, if you made under $20,000 and did less than 200 rides, you're not going to get a 1099K like you will with Uber. But you still need to pay taxes on that money, right? So that's important to know. Just because you don't receive a 1099 doesn't mean that you don't have to pay taxes, right? So definitely keep that in mind. And let's see what else we've got. Georgie says, I'm looking to supplement my rideshare income via a side hustle. I saw your recent post regarding this. I would love to see more on the subject. So definitely that's a good topic. The one thing I will say is that, right, for those drivers who want to just go out and drive, Uber makes it really easy, right? If you guys just want to turn the app on, go drive, make some money, go home, not have to think, not have to worry about it too much, there's that opportunity. But if you're looking for the ancillary stuff, right? If you're looking for the networking opportunities, if you're looking to start your own side hustle, your own business, I think one of the nice things is that Uber does make you a little money, and it provides that flexibility. So that's definitely something, I've met with lots of artists, entrepreneurs, the people who are really looking to be actors, here in LA, I meet a lot of people, Uber drivers who are actors, and I guess myself too, right? I mean, right now, that's sort of how I started. I looked at it like, hey, I'm out here driving for Uber and Lyft, but I think there's this other opportunity to create information about it, right? To do videos, to do articles. And we've got also, obviously, there's that angle. And, speaking of that, if you guys are interested in starting a rideshare blog or a YouTube channel or anything like that, shoot me an email, because I have a little project that I've been brainstorming on, and I'd love to get some reader feedback on it. So if you guys are interested in starting your own rideshare blog or YouTube channel, send me an email, harry@therideshareguy.com. I might be able to get your feedback, and you might be able to help me out, and I might be able to help you out going forward. So It looks like we've got some other questions coming in, and lots of questions. So hopefully I can get to everything. Oh, this is a good one about mileage. So Roger asked, on-trip mileage is deductible, right? How about mileage to pick up? How about mileage to reposition after drop-off? Now, basically what Roger is asking, right? When you're on a trip, Uber provides how much on-trip mileage you did in your tax summary at the end of the year. But there's a lot more miles that can be deducted on top of that, right? In between trips, right? Let's say you're waiting for a request, or let's say you turn the app off to go drive somewhere to a new position, right? You want to go away from all these other drivers. Let's say you're starting your shift at home and you drive into the city or a new location every day. Now, basically what I would say is this is a bit of a gray area. Some CPAs are more aggressive, some are less aggressive. I think almost all CPAs would agree that you can deduct all on-trip mileage, and that's the number that Uber is going to give you. But if you use your own mileage tracking app, or if you track your mileage on your own, there's probably some more mileage. Now, personally, what I do is when I leave the house for a night of driving, I start the mileage tracking app. Right now, you guys can use Stride Drive. That's a free app for iOS. You can also use QuickBooks Self-Employed. Both of those companies have good products. They're both sponsors of the blog, full disclosure. And we have links on our site where if you sign up, we'll receive a little commission or a little kickback. I guess I probably shouldn't call it kickback. That makes it sound kind of shady, but we'll receive a little commission or percentage of the sale. And these are our advertising partners. And but these companies do have great products for drivers. Stride is more of a mileage tracking, and they also do expenses. QuickBooks kind of gives you the full picture if you're really looking to then integrate with TurboTax and do your expenses. But basically, if you use one of these apps, you can track your mileage. And what I do is track from the second I leave my house. Now, all of those miles, let's say I need to drive from outside the city into the city to drive, I turn my app on, right? There's also the destination filter. A lot of drivers are now driving home and into the city with a destination filter on, which probably makes your case stronger to deduct those miles. So I guess what I would say is if you want to be the most aggressive, deduct all the miles from when you leave your house to when you get home. And if you want to be the least aggressive, deduct only the miles when you're on a trip. So that's sort of my advice there and how I handle that situation. And let's see, Leo's asking about Mile IQ. So yes, that's another great option. There's lots of mile tracking options. The most important thing though when it comes to mile tracking is really that you just use something. I don't care which app or service or whatever you guys use, just use something, because a full-time driver is going to put 1,000 miles a week on their car. And I believe the mileage deduction rate is 54 cents a mile this year and 53.5 cents a mile next year, or this year, 2017. So what that means is that that's a $535 deduction, which means you'll save at least a couple $100s on your taxes come tax time. So very important. If you're only going to track one thing, track your mileage. And then, once you get into it a little more, you can start tracking some of your other expenses. So Joseph asks, if you deduct mileage, are you allowed to deduct your oil changes? And that sort of gets into the standard mileage versus actual expense method. Now, if you do deduct your mileage and take that standard mileage rate, you can't deduct the itemized things like oil changes, maintenance and repair, right? That 54 cents per mile includes everything. But you can still deduct expenses that are ordinary and necessary to your business, right? So if you're buying waters for all your Lyft passengers, because you can get tips on the Lyft app, but you don't provide it to your Uber passengers, you can deduct those waters as part of your business, right? Because you're using that and it doesn't have anything to do with your vehicle. So just keep that stuff in mind. For example, I just bought a new Bluetooth FM transmitter because my car doesn't have built-in Bluetooth. So I'm going to deduct that on my taxes because I use that when I'm rideshare driving. Now, technically, if I use it 50% personal, 50% business, I also need to allocate. And if you use a service like TurboTax, which we're going to have a really good review on a week from today on Monday on the blog that Christian's actually working on right now, about TurboTax, for example, will ask you, hey, if you have these deductions or you have these other expenses, how much of the time do you use them personal? How much of the time do you use them business, right? So lots of that type of stuff. And so this is a good question coming in because I like this. These tax questions are important. McCarlin says, my CPA said you can't use mileage going to your first ride of the day as that's considered the commute to work. So that's a great example of where some CPAs are going to say you can't use it and some CPAs are going to say you can use it, right? Now, what some drivers have told me they do is they actually turn the destination filter on. So now it's not like you're really commuting to work, right? Now it's like you're actually working. So that's sort of one workaround, and that's definitely something that you can check out. Chuck asked about unlimited car washes, $20 a month. Yes, you can deduct car washes, since that's something, you know, that's obviously core to your business. And same thing though, you kind of technically you do have to allocate personal and business. And let's see, so we got a couple other questions coming in. And let's see, so we got the mileage stuff. So hopefully that answers, you know, I know the mileage portion, there is a lot of, I wouldn't say confusion, but there are a lot of different opinions on the mileage stuff. But basically, it's really that scale of aggressiveness. So hopefully that explains things to you guys. And kind of along these lines of taxes, Maestrid asked about tolls and fees, or I think toll fees. So tolls, typically when Uber pays a toll, that's going to show up in your gross income, but it's also going to show up as a line item as an expense on your tax summary. So you're going to need to subtract those expenses from your gross in order to get your net income. If you're paying for tolls though, to get in and out of the city, or at certain points where you're not getting reimbursed for Uber, that's another reason why you want to use an app like QuickBooks Self-Employed or Stride or any of these options that will track expenses too automatically, because now those expenses, right, those tolls that Uber isn't reimbursing you for are also tax deductible. So definitely keep that in mind. And let's see, so we've got some questions coming in about Uber Eats, and I can definitely talk about delivery if people are interested in that. Forrest Stang asked, if you're using a rental car for a time, is there any reason to track mileage to figure out splits between personal and work use of gas? So that's perfect. That's like, you should maybe be doing this YouTube live, Forrest Stang, because that's exactly what you need to do, right? If you are deducting, or let's say you're renting a car from Lyft using their Express Drive program where they charge you $150 a week or whatever it might be, that fee is deductible, but you can't deduct your mileage like you can if you own your car. But you still want to keep track of the miles driven, because if you're doing 90% business and 10% personal, you can only deduct 90% of that weekly fee. So that's a little trick, but if you guys are realizing there's sort of this pattern, right? You can deduct all this stuff, but only for the time you use it for business, right? So if you pay $100 a month for your phone, and you use it 60% of the time for business, you can only deduct 60% of that $100 a month phone bill, right? So definitely kind of keep this stuff in mind. And, you know, so we answered tolls. Business license, that's another good one that you can deduct on your taxes. Any kind of licensing or anything like that. Hey, even my maximum ride sharing profits video course, right? Since that's training that you're going to use for your business. I should probably start telling people that, but you can actually deduct you know, so if you were to take my video training course, for example, and I'm just going to grab a link right here and share it, I should probably do that. And, you know, something like that is going to be tax deductible. So any of those licensing exams or anything like that, even if you were to, let's say, buy a book on how to be a rideshare driver, that can now be deducted. So definitely, if you guys are really on top of this stuff, you'll be surprised that you may end up paying very little in taxes. And Christian, feel free to share some of the articles you've done, because we've covered this a lot. Now, if you're just getting started, worry about the mileage, right? Ease yourself into it. If you're more experienced, if you're more advanced, maybe an app like QuickBooks Self-Employed is going to be perfect for you, because now you can start really taking advantage of all these other deductions, right? These things that maybe you use some in your personal and business life. There's really a lot out there, and it can seem a little overwhelming at first, but once you get the hang of it, you can definitely save a lot of money on your taxes, and honestly, probably reduce your rideshare income almost down to zero. So definitely, you know, keep that in mind. And let's see, Michael B says, I hate to hurt the sales of third-party mileage tracking apps here, but if you're using your car 100% for Uber, you do not need to keep a trip-by-trip log. So that's a good point, but you would still need something to track your mileage, even if it's just as simple as a spreadsheet or just writing down your odometer at the beginning of the day or the beginning of the week. Honestly, when it comes to the IRS, you just want to document as much as possible, right? So like I said, I don't care which app you use, whether you use a paid one, a free one, or even just scribble notes in a notebook. It's just important that you do track, right? So use whatever works, but definitely track something. So that's good, you know, so that's advice right there. And oh, it looks like you kind of caveat, yeah, you do need the odometer readings. Tony says, is it better to get a CPA to get the most advantage of taxes and etc.? They know more than we do. And I guess what I would say is that it is important to get a CPA if you have a more complex situation, but still, you really want to understand the basics. If you do end up using a CPA, make sure you get someone who specializes in rideshare. Personally, I think Uber and Lyft drivers are at very low risk for audit, so I think it makes sense to be more aggressive, right? Imagine you're a IRS auditor, right? And you can audit some rich guy making $1 million a year, or you can audit some Uber driver who's going to report a net of $10,000, right? It may not even be worth it for an IRS auditor to audit someone that's making that little money, right? You can just imagine that they probably don't care about, is it still possible that you can get audited? Yes, but their time is not nearly as valuable, right? So just keep that in mind, that if you are low risk for an audit, personally, I think I'm low risk for an audit, so I'm much more aggressive with my taxes. So I'm probably going to jinx myself and get audited this year, but whatever. And let's see. Lyft requires, Andrea says, Lyft required a vehicle inspection, even though my state did not. Those fees are deductible. Yes, that's a good example, right? So really, kind of, if you guys are really seeing the trend or the theme here, it's really, there's a lot of stuff that's deductible. And if you guys do a good job of tracking this, I think the apps are the easiest to use because you can kind of swipe left, like QuickBooks allows you to swipe left or right to categorize personal versus business deductions. And you can really, there's a lot that you can deduct and get creative. So that's, one area where maybe a CPA could help. And let's see, Jay asked, can you deduct a garage? And I'm assuming that you're referring to somewhere where you park your car, and that should also be deductible on top of the standard mileage rate. You just have to kind of go according to the percent of time you use personal versus business. So that's another good one. And do you claim the home office deduction? So that's one where I'm not sure actually for rideshare drivers, because I'm not sure how much business you're doing out of your home office. Me personally, like literally, I'm in my home office right now. So me personally, yes, I claim the home office deduction. But if you're a rideshare driver, that's one that maybe I can look into a little more. I don't know that I necessarily would see a way where you could kind of justify that. I think, CPAs might tell you that that may not work out. So, definitely good questions coming in. And Matthew says, let's see, we'll start doing a couple more non-tax related questions, maybe take a break and circle back around. So if you guys are just joining right now, thank you for coming on. I believe we're up over 100, I think we got up to around 100, 150 live viewers. So that's awesome. Really appreciate everyone joining. We're getting near to the end. We'll probably go for another 10 or 15 minutes. If you can make it, I'm going to be giving away this Rideshare Guy hat. And actually, I'll be giving away 3 of them. So definitely make sure you stay tuned at the end. I make it nice and easy to join the contest. It'll be super simple. But you can win a little swag if you stay tuned to the end. And definitely want to answer as many questions as possible. Let's see. Alan says, sorry, my voice, we're talking a lot. So if you've been turned down for Lyft, can you reapply after a period of time? Now, this is something that comes up with Uber and with Lyft. And honestly, I haven't found a good way of reapplying sort of, I wouldn't say legally, but sort of, with the same application or whatever it might be. Let's say you were turned down for some reason, and now you think you may be eligible, you got it off your background check, or you weren't sure, and you just want to reapply. I have heard of drivers successfully reapplying, but they've had to use a different phone number and a different email address. So if you guys use Gmail, there's a little trick you can do. You can put a dot anywhere within your email. So for example, like if your email is harry@gmail.com, you can do harr.y@gmail.com, and that will still go to your personal email. Test it out. It works. Have your friends send you an email. You can also do a Harry +1 +2. Any of that type of combination will also go to your Gmail. And then speaking of Google, you can also use a Google Voice to get a second phone number for free. So that might be one way. It might just be easier to do that than to try and contact Lyft or Uber, restart an application, do all that hassle. So that's definitely something you can do. And let's see, Jesus Romero says, can you deduct gymnasium payments? I don't think that would work. Let's see, what other questions we got coming in. We got a couple questions about Uber Eats coming in. So Bill says, Uber Eats just arrived in my area. Does it run on the same driver app where I can't just do Uber Eats. And basically, so Uber Eats is something I think we're going to look into a little more. We're probably going to try and do some more videos, some more articles on the blog. But what you guys need to know about Uber Eats is that when it first launches in a city, honestly, the pay is pretty decent, right? Because they're typically bonusing or incentivizing drivers, or frankly, just paying more. And I think what we saw in LA recently, after about a year of Uber Eats, they lowered rates, and now drivers aren't nearly so excited about doing those Uber Eats runs. You can set up a profile with Uber, and sometimes their customer service can do it, sometimes they can't, but you can always go in person and make sure they get it done. But you can set up a profile that allows you to get UberX and Uber Eats rides, so either one, or you can set up profiles that's UberX only or Uber Eats only. And I know drivers have been successful doing that. So I guess what I would say is with Uber Eats is, honestly, if it first launches in your market, definitely give it a shot, try it out, see what the pay is like, see how you like it, because they tend to pay more. But over time, if they lower the rates or it's just not worth it anymore for you, definitely maybe it's time to bow out. I know that I was talking with Ezra. He has a YouTube channel, The Rideshare Genius, and one of the things he told me is he doesn't like Uber Eats because Uber tells passengers or customers that there's no need to tip, and he doesn't like kind of promoting the fact that, hey, people are delivering food, you should be tipping, like with Postmates or DoorDash. So that's something to consider. You won't get tips on Uber Eats like you will with Postmates or DoorDash. And we've got lots of articles and videos on that Postmates and DoorDash experience. And we'll be working on more too to cover Uber Eats. So hopefully that answers your question. And let's see, we've got a couple others coming in. And looks like we've got more questions about taxes and insurance. Matthew says, I requested to have them separated, Uber Eats and UberX. They did it, no problem. So like I said, that should be no problem. But if you do run into issues, let me know. I'm happy to help you guys out. And this is a good question. So Lance Hall asks, how do you calculate data usage for business, for personal, for purpose of deduction? And there's not a great answer to that, but I guess what I would say is use something that seems legit. Like, so when I go and calculate my personal use, I might look at 1 week's worth of calls and say, hey, 50 of these calls, I made 100 calls in 1 week. 50 of these calls were personal, 50 were business, and I can now extrapolate that and say that 50% of my time is going to be personal, or 50% of my time is going to be business. And those are the types of things that a CPA can help you with. But at the same time, there's also lots of good tax resources online. We just posted a really good article that I can try and find quickly, but it was about what can drivers do if they forgot to track their mileage. Now, this was a guest post from Stride Drive, and I really like the information they gave, though, because it sort of talked a lot about that, right? Imagine you're in this situation, you didn't track all your mileage, but you now need to figure out how to deduct the most possible. So I'll leave a link in the show notes, and you guys can check that out. So I'm going to go for just another few more minutes here. If you guys have any last questions, don't hesitate to get them in right now. Like I said, I'll be doing a little swag giveaway in just a few minutes. So if you've made it with me this whole hour, I really appreciate you joining. I enjoy doing these YouTube lives, hearing from my audience. And like I said, we do these the first week of every single month. The best way to know about them is to subscribe to our YouTube channel, turn on notifications, so then that way you'll know when we go live, when we release new videos, and you can kind of don't have to rely on setting calendar reminders or missing them, because I have heard from a lot of people that they were kind of bummed that they missed the last one. So hopefully you can get those notifications going. So let's see what other questions we have going. And then, Char and Cincy ask, are customers supposed to come to the car for Uber Eats? So that is one thing that I like about Uber Eats, is that customers actually have to come to you. Now, do customers always do that? No. A lot of drivers will end up texting or calling the passengers, but that is a nice thing because you don't have to worry about parking. So if you're delivering in a downtown area, it is nice because a lot of your drop-offs, you don't have to worry about parking. It's on the customer to come out and meet you, which is unlike Postmates and DoorDash. On Postmates and DoorDash, the companies expect you to take it to the customer. So that's definitely a big difference. And let's see. Okay, so we've got a couple questions about what do you think, Eric asked, what do you think about the new plan for Uber drivers to accept cash? And this is something that I think just happened on our last YouTube live, so I don't know that I got to it last time, but you know, this is sort of one of those obvious ones where there's some obvious safety and kind of issues like that. Uber does allow passengers to accept cash payments in cities around the world, or allow drivers to accept cash payments from riders in countries like India and elsewhere where cash is more prevalent than credit cards. But I know personally for me, I'm not a big fan of taking cash as a driver. I kind of want everything electronic. So that's definitely, you know, one thing that I would feel. And let's see, we also got a couple questions coming in about, so I see more stuff about tipping. Tipping is usually an interesting topic here, but yeah, so hopefully, let's see. Hopefully you guys are getting a lot out of this. And if you do have any final questions, definitely get them in now. I think I'm going to wrap it up in 1 or 2 minutes. And let's do the swag giveaway right now. So what we're going to do today is I'm going to give out 3 of these hats. And all you guys need to do to enter this is to do 3 things. Super simple. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. Most of you are probably already subscribed. Like this video. And then send me an email, harry@therideshareguy.com, with the subject line YouTube Live. I'm going to pick 3 random winners out of everyone that emails me. So if you guys aren't watching this right now, or if you get to it in the next day or 2, not to worry, or in the next hour or 2, I'm going to randomly select out of everyone that emails me. So feel free to enter, and I'll pick 3 winners, notify the winners, and then send you guys a Rideshare Guy hat. So hopefully everyone that's won them in the past 5 months got them okay. And I think that we've been sending out a bunch of hats lately, so hopefully you guys got them all right. And let's see, I think I'm going to go ahead and maybe just touch on the tipping thing one last time, and then we'll go ahead and end the session. But in short, with the tipping, you know, that is one thing. You know, we're actually testing some signs, we're testing some boxes and things like that. And that's one thing that I think, you know, there is this kind of angst from drivers to Uber that, hey, that Uber is telling all the passengers that tip is, you know, that there's no need to tip, right? That's sort of the messaging they say. But obviously for drivers, you know, $1 or $2 an hour tip is a big difference. And we noticed in our 2017 survey, actually, that Lyft drivers reported making $2 an hour more, so $17.50 an hour versus $15.50 an hour, or something like that. With Uber drivers, I think a lot of that has to do with tipping. So Lyft app is definitely one option. And, you know, like some drivers are saying, right, it is about educating the passengers. And that's why some drivers are using these signs, using these boxes. But I guess what my advice would be is that you don't, if you are going to be kind of bringing up the topic of tips or expecting tips or anything like that, you really want to be providing that 5-star experience. You really want to be going out of your way, right? Take a ride as a passenger, see what other drivers are doing. How can you do it better? So hopefully you guys got a lot out of this session. I'm going to go ahead and wrap this up right now. Like I mentioned, in these YouTube Lives, we do them every single month, first week of the month. Subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications so that you know that these are coming. And I'll stay on for a few minutes right here once the live session ends to answer questions. Christian, give a big thanks to Christian for answering questions that I didn't get to during the chat. And of course, if you guys do have anything for me that I wasn't able to get to, shoot me an email, harry@therideshareguy.com. We've got videos on the YouTube channel that cover almost everything. We've also got tons of articles, lots of podcasts, so we most likely have your question answered. And if not, I'll do my best to create some content to answer that question. So I just want to thank everyone for coming on. It looks like we've got Eddie, Alini, Leo, McCarland, Scott. Thank you everyone that was joining. Thank you to everyone who asked questions. You know, if you haven't already liked this video, subscribe to the channel and sent me an email. Go ahead and do that now, harry@therideshareguy.com. Enter to win that swag. And hopefully you guys got a lot out of this. Hopefully I answered all your tax questions, and we'll be able to do more of these in the future. All right, take care. Stay safe out there.